This is the Week on Word, a podcast featuring a roundup of the most interesting, informative, and entertaining interviews from Word Radio. You can listen to Word anywhere, anytime at WURDradio.com and the Word Radio app. Give us a play and download it today. In this episode, Dr. Marlene Daut is a Yale University professor and recent author of The First and Last King of Haiti. She joined Dr. James Peterson on Evening WURDs and talked about how American media has revised current events in Haiti livelihood and politics. And Senator Sharif Street joined Wake Up With WURD with Solomon Jones to discuss the recent arson at Governor Josh Shapiro's residence that took place while the governor's family was inside. But first, Dr. Meredith D. Clark is an associate professor at Northeastern University and the founder of the Center for Communication, Media, Innovation, and Social Change. Dr. Clark spoke with Tanya Pendleton on Reality Check on the importance of intimate Black social spaces through Twitter.
We've got someone here now joining us who is going to talk to us about Black folks and communication and how our community comes together. Well, it was coming together until Elon Musk got involved. In any case, we've got Meredith Clark here. Meredith D. Clark, she is an associate professor at the School of Journalism and the Department of Communication Studies at Northeastern University. And she's also the founding director of the Center for Communication, Media, Innovation, and Social Change, and two-time graduate of FAMU. Okay, well, you know, HBCUs, that's the thing. And she's got a PhD too, smart lady in mass communications. And she is the author of the book, We Tried to Tell Y'all, Black Twitter, there it is, and the Rise of Digital Counter-Narratives that came out in January, Oxford University Press. Welcome, Meredith Clark. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, We Tried to Tell Y'all seems to be the rallying cry that has been going on ever since the election. So well-chosen title for the book. But the book is about the rise of Black Twitter and maybe the fall of Black Twitter under the ownership of Elon Musk. But what made you want to focus on Black Twitter for this book? And where does it stand now?
Mm-hmm. So this book actually started as my dissertation project. I was a journalist before I went into academia. And when I entered my PhD program, I saw that what was happening on Twitter among Black folks was not being covered accurately or well. And so I was deeply concerned about it and ultimately decided to focus my research on it. To make sure that Black Twitter's story was committed specifically to the academic record, so that when people were talking about us and studying us, they were actually getting our perspectives. So did a bunch of research, spent a lot of time on Twitter myself, talked to over 100 people who use Twitter, were on Twitter, very online for this book. And over the course of about 10 years, put this together. And then just as I turned in the final draft of the manuscript, Elon Musk bought Twitter. And so I had to ask for my manuscript back and update it so that we knew what was going on with Black Twitter in its last days, if you could call it that.
Yeah, right. So what was it about Black Twitter that you feel was of benefit to Black people?
Oh, goodness, connection. Absolutely connection and visibility. We were able to see and tell stories with each other in ways that we hadn't before. You know, Black folks have always used the media and technologies available to us to do whatever it is that we need to do for ourselves and our communities. But being on this social networking platform, we were able to talk with one another, to organize, to make each other laugh, to support each other at a speed and a scale that we hadn't been able to in, say, the print era or the television era. And so having that connection was really essential in everything from just making sure that Black women were supported in the work that they were doing and protected, that we were paying attention to issues like Black men being victims of sexual abuse in childhood, organizing in the ways that we saw during the movement for Black lives, and really coming together just to take care of family business.
How important and impactful do you believe that it was in the, let's say, decade or so that you were studying it?
I think Black Twitter was absolutely pivotal to so much of history, right? That it goes far beyond media history. We can actually look at the course of American and global history and see the impact of what the connection of all these Black folks did for ourselves and for the world. You don't have the movement for Black lives without Black Twitter. My sister scholar friend, Sherry Williams, writes about Black Twitter's influence on television. And you don't have things like artists and directors and actors live tweeting and talking in real time with people without Black Twitter's influence. There's so much that you can directly point to the influence of Black Twitter and say, it's because of the connectivity that happened. The one last thing that I'll say about it is making sure that history is accurately reflected, right? Black Twitter remembers that it wasn't Nikki Haley who brought down the Confederate flag over the state capital of South Carolina, much as she tried to claim on the campaign trail. We all saw Bree Newsom and a team of people go up there, scale that. Bree brought that flag down in the name of our ancestors and Jesus. And to see someone try and rewrite history in real time is mind-boggling. But that's the power of having these online networks where we all saw what happened. We have records of what happened, and we can do truth-telling ourselves.
Once Elon Musk, he bought Twitter a couple of years ago, renamed it X, and said that he did so in the name of free speech and that he wanted all viewpoints to be able to use the platform. He felt as though people were shut down when they were homophobic, misogynistic, violent, all these kinds of things. And he opened up Twitter to people who have since just turned it into a platform of vitriol and hatred, if you ask me. Now, some conservatives might say that they just have more of a voice, but do you think that there was some intentionality in Elon Musk doing this to try to bring down the influence of Black Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can look at the history of Black organizing and just Black connectivity and collectivity. Not even, organizing for civil rights, just Black folks being together and prospering, right? And know that there is a pattern to folks doing whatever they can to disrupt that. You can make that connection between communities like Rosewood and the Black Wall Street out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can look at Black liberation movements and what happened with COINTELPRO. You can look at the MOVE bombing and see what happens when Black people are getting together, organizing, and someone powerful says that this is a threat to me, and so I'm going to put an end to it. In this case, it happens in the information age. And so in the information age, it's a lot harder to disrupt people. But one way that you could do it is by buying and owning the platform, right? We already saw the platform was long imperfect before Elon Musk. It was from its inception. The fact that it was designed without much Black input at all. But there is something that a couple of podcast hosts said, Andrea Chalupa and Sarah Kendzior. They have a podcast, Gaslit Nation, and one of the hosts said that you don't cede territory in an information war. And I continue to repeat that because that is exactly what Musk did by purchasing Twitter and by upending the controls that they had for moderating speech and access to that platform, all in the name of so-called free speech, which apparently few people aligned with his worldview have a solid understanding of.
Yeah, I mean, African Americans are still on Twitter. Many did decamp to Blue Sky and other platforms. I'm seeing more conversation on Threads, but it's not the same. It's not the same where people are able to gather and have community and follow each other, sometimes argue with each other, sometimes have joy and fun with each other. So do you think, from what you've seen, that he was successful in a sense at driving this communal conversation either elsewhere or really kind of diminishing it altogether?
Yes, I would say if the goal was to disrupt Black Twitter's connectivity, collectivity, and communication, that he was absolutely successful in that, because the critical mass that was once there on the platform has dispersed to other places, even though a lot of people do still maintain their accounts. And when stuff pops off, they go back to the platform to talk about it. But the utility of the platform itself has been so disrupted, not only for Black Twitter, but for people who just want to use it, for even things like government agencies that use Twitter to disseminate information, everything from in times of emergency to the pandemic and how to protect yourself. There's so much junk on the platform that it's really difficult to see meaningful information and even to see the people that you have long been connected to. So if his goal was to disrupt, then he was absolutely successful with that.
So where do we go from here? Because the thing is, in us seeking community, and particularly with Twitter, being able to talk across various regional areas, being able to talk from different socioeconomic backgrounds, there really was community established there. And there were certain people who became sort of big on that platform and connected to a lot of people who could drive conversations. Where do we go from here? Because all of these platforms are owned by people who could at any point just say, I don't like this conversation, I don't like that conversation, I don't like that communication. How do we reconnect, in a sense, at this point?
Well, I think we maintain the connections that we had before Twitter. And that's the thing that gives me hope about studying something like a social media platform and community building on it. I like to look at these technologies and the eras that are reflected in the book as part of a larger life cycle. So in the same way that print hasn't fully gone away, it's not extinct, in the same way that radio still exists, that television still exists, like the introduction of this platform just means another turn of evolution. And so what I see is that we're doing some of the things that people long said on the platform we should do. Let's go back to connecting in person a little bit more. Let's go back to gatekeeping some more, shielding some of those secrets and plans and ideas and thoughts and keeping them inside the community and doing that with more intimate forms of communication. So I see us returning to those spaces. We're all learning, we're in a recession, entering a recession. We're learning to do things like get together with friends at home, like we used to, right? And going back to those ways that we connect offline as well.
Yeah, so back to the cookout, basically. We just gather together in homes and salons, the cookout, and maybe with more of a sense that this is precious communication that we may have to do in person, given everything else that's going on, and figure out how to connect and do it that way, and maybe a little less reliance on our devices and these platforms that we don't own.
Yes.
Well, the book is We Tried to Tell Y'all, Black Twitter and the Rise of Digital Counter-Narratives. That is available everywhere books are sold on Oxford University Press. Meredith Clark, thank you so much for joining us on Reality Check today. We'd love to have you come back on. You've got so much versatility when it comes to communication, so I'm sure there are more conversations that we can have going forward.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to The Week on Word.
Hi, I'm Tanya Pendleton, the host of Reality Check, airing Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Word Radio. Join me as I talk to newsmakers and noisemakers in politics, sports, entertainment, culture, and tech. We'll take deep dives into stories from Philadelphia and beyond. Tune in at 10 a.m. Monday through Thursday on Word Radio for your daily Reality Check.
You're listening to The Week on Word. Make sure you look for and follow WURD Radio on social media. Up next, Dr. Marlene Daut joins Dr. James Peterson on Evening WURDs.
Excited to welcome to the program Dr. Marlene Daut, an award-winning author, scholar, and professor specializing in Haitian history and culture at Yale University. Dr. Marlene's most recent book, The First and Last King of Haiti, The Rise and Fall of Henry Christophe, explores the fascinating life of Haiti's only king while delving into the complex history of 19th century Caribbean monarchy. Dr. Daut, welcome to Evening WURDs.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Am I pronouncing your surname correctly?
Yes, so Marlene Daut. Yes.
Marlene. It's not Marlene. Dr. Marlene Daut. So I had the surname right, but I didn't have the first name right. Well, Dr. Marlene Daut, welcome to Evening WURDs. So the First and Last King of Haiti is a tome. I have not a chance to get through all 670 pages of it, but I get a little bit of context. You know, obviously as a news program, you know, we have been following contemporary news in Haiti, and I'd love for you to reflect on that a little bit before you. And I'm imagining that you will be able to help us understand how this history shapes some of the contemporary moments. So obviously some of the news stories we've been covering around Haiti here on Evening WURDs, the ridiculously disgusting stereotypes and racism that was coming out of Springfield, Ohio, right? I mean, we've had folks from the Haitian Times come on and talk specifically about that. We've also had experts come on and talk about what American media is calling the gang takeover of the capital of Haiti, which is really more like an organized crime takeover of the capital of Haiti. We've had great folks come on and talk about that. And then more recently, the robbing of hundreds of thousands of Haitian migrants of their legal status here in the United States. And so this is the context within which we wanted to have a great historian on Yale to come talk about this. But I wonder if you might want to weigh in on any of those more contemporary stories before we dive into the First and Last King of Haiti.
Absolutely. I mean, those stories sadly are not divorced from the one that I'm telling in my book. Mm-hmm. You know, we're on April 14th right now, and in 3 days from now is the 200th anniversary of the indemnity that France forced Haiti to pay as the price of independence. So that ordinance was dated April 17th, 1825. So we're here 200 years later watching the aftermath of not only that debt that robbed Haiti of the ability to progress, to go on its own path, to choose the way that it would be sovereign, instead of having this huge pressure from the rest of the world to pay this enormous sum. And then the subsequent occupations that came on the back of that were not unrelated to that debt. The U.S. occupation from 1915 to 1934 is not unrelated to that. The United States interest was in Haiti paying its debt because the U.S. banks had an interest in that debt. And so when we see how things unfolded, we see that behind the scenes, there's always a kind of foreign hand. Previously, the United States, Germany, France, and then more recently also the United Nations. So this is actually a story that involves the whole world. And the one person who was against this indemnity in the era was Henri Christophe, who's the subject of the book.
And I want you to give our listeners a sense of Henri Christophe, because a lot of our listeners will know Toussaint's Louverture and understand his role in the history. I'm not sure if all of our listeners understand the indemnity, which is this extraordinary debt imposed on the nation of Haiti as a consequences of them liberating themselves. Let's talk about that first, and then let's talk about King Christophe a little bit.
Yes. So, of course, Haiti in the 18th century was the French colony of Saint-Domingue. It was the richest sugar colony in the world, but it was also the cruelest slave colony in the world. The French transported more Africans, forcibly transported them to this island than they did on any of their other Caribbean holdings. And so they were outnumbered. And because there was such cruelty, they eventually rebelled. And on January 1st, 1804, the freedom fighters declared their independence from France. France was, in a fit about this for the entire 19th century. Under all of Haiti's rulers, France tried repeatedly to, quote unquote, restore Saint-Domingue, which meant to bring back slavery and to restore their domination. And what's extraordinary about this is not that they did this under all Haiti's rulers in the 19th century. Mm-hmm. They did this regardless of who was in power in France. When Napoleon Bonaparte was in power, they were doing it. When he was unseated both times by the Bourbons, Louis XVIII, he tried again. And it was Louis XVIII's brother, Charles X, who in 1825 cooked up this idea that since it was very clear that it would be impossible to reconquer Haiti without a huge war and a huge loss of life, he came up with this idea that Haitians should pay France 150 million francs as the price of France's kind of relinquishing of their quote unquote former.
And this is from the 1800s. What's the equivalent of that number over time?
So economists say that it's between 22 billion and 44 billion US dollars equivalent, but there are estimates that are more than 100 billion because Haiti was forced to give France most favored nation status. And in this era of tariffs, we can perhaps imagine what that means. And so they lost a ton of money from their trade that they had going on with Great Britain, which was their most lucrative trading partner.
So this is systematic racist underdevelopment of a nation over centuries.
Yes, it's punishment.
And it's been very effective. And so this is what's hard, I think, sometimes for Americans who look at Haiti through the lens of American media. It is difficult to appreciate the depths and the levels of this systematic underdevelopment over the centuries. Like Haiti didn't just pop up to be what it is right now. As if you think it's unstable, or you wonder why there are migrants coming to the U.S., or you wonder why there's organized crime elements controlling the cap. It didn't just pop up this way. It's the result of systematic underdevelopment.
Systematic underdevelopment and also meddling within Haitian sovereignty, trying to orchestrate elections to put people in power who were more favorable to U.S. interests throughout the 19th century, but particularly in the latter half of the 19th century, because the United States, perhaps unsurprising to some, wanted to annex certain territories in the Caribbean, including spots on Haiti to put military bases. And they tried in Haiti, they tried in the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and of course, we see they succeeded in Puerto Rico, having Puerto Rico as a territory now.
Yeah, the empire, the chess game that empires play, it's extraordinary the extent to which we're still wrestling with some of those challenges. If we talk about Henri Christophe a little bit, what kind of this is? I'm assuming this is the definitive sort of project about, I mean, I'm not a Haitian expert, but I'm assuming this is the definitive project about his life and his personality and his letters and kind of how he showed up as a leader. Can you give our listeners a sense of what he means to this particular history and some of the context that we're talking about in terms of economics, liberation, and autonomy for the country of Haiti?
Yeah, it's not unrelated to what we were just discussing, the kind of chess pieces, because Christophe actually was born on the island of Grenada, which is in the Southern Caribbean. And it was at the time a British colony, but it had previously been a French colony. But the French had lost it in a war to the British. And this story is so much about the changing of the guard in these islands.
Of the colonial guard, yes.
Yeah, they just changed masters for a really long time until the era of decolonization. And so Christophe is on this island when a French general comes to reconquer it for France. And he succeeds. And then he takes 3 people of color and some captives. I think Christophe was among them. That's what I talk about in the book. To North America, to the battlefields of the American Revolutionary War. Christophe participated in the American Revolutionary War at the Battle of Savannah in October 1779 when he was only 12 years old. So that was his first taste of revolution. And after that, like so many of the free men of color and men of color from what would eventually become Haiti who fought at that battle, and there were hundreds of them, Christophe was sent to or ended up somehow on Saint-Domingue, which again was that cruel slave colony. And he was so young, so his life was probably extremely difficult at first. But nevertheless, he participated in the Haitian Revolution. And in fact, he's one of the signers of the Haitian Declaration of Independence.
Amazing.
So who would have thought this child, most likely born into slavery in Grenada, would then eventually become king of Haiti?
How did we lose him in history? Like how do figures like this get lost in history?
It's extraordinarily willful, I have to say, because Christophe, when Napoleon Bonaparte initially tries to bring back slavery during the time period when the colony is free of slavery because the Haitian revolutionaries have under Toussaint Louverture's leadership, made sure that it ended.
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon Bonaparte rises to power and he wants to reinstate slavery. He does not agree with this. He's issues so many racist statements. It's unbelievable. And it's Christophe who opposes him. He tells him, if you persist in these threats, you will only enter this city, that city being the principal port city in the colony, only once it has been reduced to ashes. And even on these ashes, I will fight you. So that's what Christophe wrote to Napoleon's right-hand man, who had come with 30,000 French soldiers to invade. And yet, you're right, Christophe's history is overshadowed by Toussaint Louverture, by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Haiti's founder. And I think that's largely because he's a hugely military man in this. He's fighting in these battles. And so he appears to be behind the scenes for a lot of the major action until he becomes a head of state.
But he's obviously a hero, and maybe radicalized in the American Revolution. Extraordinarily and a fascinating story. Early on in the text, you talk about the fact that there were a population of, I don't know if mulatto is the right term, but of Black folks in Haiti who were free. But those are not the folks who galvanized the revolution. It was those who were enslaved. I don't want to start any kind of intra-racial wars here, but Dr. Daut, can you explain that to me a little bit? I'm trying to understand how the revolution, and really this is maybe the most famous revolution in this hemisphere, right? How the revolution was not really led by the free Black people there, but by the enslaved Black people there.
That's right. So the free people of color, which included some people we would describe as mixed race, but some people not, like Toussaint Louverture. Toussaint had been previously enslaved, but when the revolution breaks out, he already has free status. So there were many different kinds of quote unquote free people of color in the colony. But the initial revolt and rebellion that starts in August 1791 it happens as a result of Black freedom fighters who were either maroons who had run away from the plantations, or those who were still living on the plantations, but in positions of leadership and technically had enslaved status. So we have a man named Boukman Duddy, for example. We have Jean-François Biassou, and they are the true motors of the revolution, because a lot of the free people of color Toussaint Louverture accepted, and by that I mean people who already had free status, they were really only interested in getting equal rights with the white French colonists initially, because they don't want to lose their lucrative business because they were enslavers. Many of them were enslavers.
Let's talk about the rise and maybe fall of Christophe. How does he come to power? What's the significance of the moment that he is head of state, and what ultimately happens to him?
Yes. So after independence, Christophe becomes general in chief of the Haitian army. So he's pretty important.
What does that mean? Because usually the like in the United States, the president is the head of the army. How does that work in this moment in history?
Well, Dessalines, who's Haiti's founder, had done something a bit surprising. He'd become an emperor, and his title was Emperor Jacques I. And Haiti was technically, people always say it's the first Black republic, but before it was a republic, it was a
monarchy. Right.
Absolutely. Right. So it's the Empire of Haiti. Christophe is the general in chief, so he is essentially running the country. And that's what I detail in my book, is that, yes, he's got this friendship with Dessalines, but he appears to be pretty much in charge. Except there are a lot of things he can't really control. So you might think, well, what, Haiti needs this army to keep France out. Yes, to a huge extent, because guess what? On the eastern side of the island, which is now the Dominican Republic, that's France. France had at the 1795 treaty.
So they're right at the gates. They're literally right at the gates.
They are at the gates because France had taken control over the whole island in 1795. And the Haitian revolutionaries were only effective at getting rid of them on the western third, the part that's now Haiti. So they've got this huge threat there. They also have the United States that don't know what they're going to do. The United States ends up issuing a trade embargo under Thomas Jefferson, which leads to deaths in Haiti because they cannot get flour, they cannot get bandages and things that they need for their hospitals. That this trade embargo was not just semantic. It actually caused harm to the Haitian people. And this started in 1806.
And Jefferson's politics here are he's pro enslavement, so they're terrified of what's happening in Haiti, essentially.
Exactly. So they have all these geopolitical threats, and then they want to keep Great Britain happy. And so one of the ways that they can keep Great Britain happy, because they want to trade, they want to export coffee to them so they can get money, they've got to make sure that they never say anything about slavery in Jamaica, that they never say anything about slavery in Trinidad and Tobago. They have this careful dance to do. So this is the position Christophe finds himself in at the moment that Dessalines is assassinated in October 1806 by members of his own military from the southern part of the country.
Of course.
And Christophe is, his first reactions, of course, are he's despondent. He's trying to figure out what happens. But he's also like, oh, no, what if this gives the rest of the world pretext to come and try to do something here?
That's right.
And because he already knows they will use this as an excuse. But he ends up becoming interim president of Haiti. But he's wary of those conspirators. He figures out who was in charge of the conspiracy, and he doesn't want anything to do with them. But this event effectively fractures Haiti into two states now. And Christophe ruled in the north as president, and a man named Alexandre Pétion, who had orchestrated the assassination, ruled in the south over what is then the Republic of Haiti.
Unbelievable. We couldn't get along. Unbelievable that we couldn't get along. This is what happens. Dr. Daut, we're out of time. I first of all, I love your energy and your passion about this work. This is so important work. I mean, I didn't know about this history until I read some of your work. So I appreciate the incredible work and the detail and the depth here is so important. One last question though. The future for Haiti. What's the future for this nation that has this complicated history?
I think, and I hope the future is sovereignty. I hope that the rest of the world has seen that a non-sovereign Haiti will only lead to chaos. Chaos for everyone involved. For the United States, which is contributing to the chaos, for France that now has to repeatedly answer these calls about restitution, that sovereignty is the answer to the problems in Haiti. And that's what Haiti has not had effectively since the era of Christophe and the monarchy instantiated in 1811.
Dr. Marlene Daut, an award-winning author, scholar, and professor specializing in Haitian history and culture at Yale University. We love your energy and enthusiasm about your work. It is incredible work, Doc. Appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with us about the first and last king of Haiti, the rise and fall of Henri Christophe, which explores a fascinating life. It's an incredible read. I'm going to finish all 656 pages. I promise you this. It's an incredible read, but also about a history that we don't know enough about and that a lot of us have a lot to learn from in terms of the geopolitical arrangements of this contemporary moment. Thank you so much for the work and taking time out of your schedule to join us here on Evening Words.
You're checking out The Week on Word. Stay connected on the go with the new and improved Word Radio app. Search Word Radio in your app store. Stream every show with increased clarity. Easily access Word TV, EcoWord, and Livelihood. Remember, Black Media Matters. Get the new and improved Word Radio app today. Available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. You're listening to the Week on Word podcast. To learn more about our programming, just visit WURDradio.com. Our last conversation for this episode features Senator Sharif Street, who joined Wake Up With WURD with Solomon Jones.
Joining us now is Senator Sharif Street. Senator Street, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Solomon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Look, every day God gives me is a good one.
Okay, so I got to ask you, since you're back and forth to Harrisburg, about what is going on with the governor. Of course, we know that his house was set on fire. They have arrested someone in that crime. How does something like that happen, given that he has that 24/7 state police protection?
Look, that's the question that really I'm trying to wrestle with. You know, the governor's mansion has fencing. There are state police troopers. State police are trained for this purpose. So when you say state police, these are not just like regular cops. These are folks that are trained to do dignitary protection, trained to guard the governor's residence. And there's pretty extensive security even when I go in there, the last time I went in there, I was patted down and metal detectors, and I've been in there a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. And the distance that you have to go from the front gate to the actual getting to the mansion is pretty far. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how you can miss a guy running across the lawn and how he gets all the way to the residence, let alone breaks a window and gets Molotov cocktails inside. It's a little surreal, and it's disturbing because with that level of security, and then this guy turned himself in, and apparently he said, admits to it. But I will just say it is concerning that one person could have accomplished all that.
It is very concerning to me, and having seen how dignitaries are protected, I'm baffled. I really am. Like, how does that happen? And so I'm wondering if there will be an investigation or hearings by the legislature. Is that something that's being talked about in the House, in the State House or the State Senate?
Well, I think we're going to probably take cues from the governor because it was his residence. But certainly there's going to be discussion. There's interaction. Right now, we're, I imagine this is, in addition to this being a major political incident, this is traumatic for the governor and his family. His family was inside. I think it'd probably be less traumatic for him if it was just an attack on him personally. Mm-hmm. I know the governor. I don't think he's easily shaken. Mm-hmm. But the fact that his wife and children were inside the house, it was coming on the eve of the Seder dinner, which is for Passover, which is for people who are not Jewish listening, it's a pretty significant, one of the most important religious rituals that the Jewish community undergoes each year. And so it was a really terrible time to do this. And the other thing that is concerning to me is, was this, and we don't have data on this, but it's certainly, given the timing, and the governor just posted the Seder dinner at the governor's mansion, was this a hate crime? Was this targeted him because he was Jewish and was practicing his faith in the governor's mansion? And that would make it even more heinous, because certainly any attack on the governor, if it was attacked because of political motivations, that's bad. But if it was trying to actually intimidate an entire faith of people from practicing, that's even worse.
Yeah. And so as we look at the aftermath of this, we know that the person has been arrested. We know that he's been charged. We know that he has somewhat of a criminal history. Do we also know whether or not this person had any mental illness issues as well?
Well, apparently, from reportings, and I don't have a lot of inside information, but from reportings I've seen, he's claiming he doesn't, but I think his attorneys are trying to say that he does.
Okay.
So, mental illness from the perspective of is he mentally culpable to take charges? I don't know. But I will say that he certainly doesn't belong on the streets, and this is really disturbing.
Do we know if he acted alone?
Well, he's claiming he acted alone. Mm-hmm. I am skeptical, personally, that any alone acting individual could have accomplished what he says. Mm-hmm. And the fact that this is not the idea that he acted alone is not coming from the result of an investigation, but him saying he acted alone is, in his confession is also concerning, because I just don't know how a lone acting individual could have accomplished what he accomplished. It's possible, I'm not an expert in any of this, but I'm a person who has pretty significant firsthand experience going in and out that mansion. I just don't know how a lone individual accomplishes that.
Mm-hmm. So I know that the state police will certainly do an investigation, but they'll be investigating themselves. Is there any consideration of bringing in an outside entity to look at what happened there other than the state police?
Well, I don't know that they'll be allowed to. They will conduct an internal investigation, but I don't know that will be sufficient, even from the governor's perspective. The state does have a variety of mechanisms, inspector generals and others that can conduct investigations. without it necessarily being the state police investigating themselves. So I think that there will be, the Attorney General will probably look into it. I imagine the Dauphin County District Attorney's Office is going to be involved. So they won't have the luxury of merely investigating themselves. Whether we get into a legislative inquiry, I don't know. But there will certainly be a lot of administrative agencies that are beyond the state police that are investigating what happened.
Got it. We're talking with State Senator Sharif Street, and there's a lot happening here in Philadelphia, specifically around wellness in our community. Black people tend to have worse outcomes when it comes to health. We have pre-existing conditions that make our outcomes worse. We have less resources. And so we've talked a lot about wellness in our community. And there is a wellness pop-up that's happening on April 26th. Tell us about it.
Look, we're going to be up at Enon for a wellness pop-up. We're doing this with the Office of Reentry Partnerships. There'll be an expungement clinic, health resources, and more. We've done a lot of these wellness events targeting a lot of populations. One population you don't hear connected to wellness a lot, but we probably should, is the reentry community. A lot of people get caught up in making mistakes because of trauma, and ultimately, even if they have changed their life and that they're not engaged in any negative criminal activity, that doesn't mean that the trauma is gone. And then there are other people who maybe, or don't have that kind of psychological trauma. They just need wellness because a lot of that population where they're dealing with all the stuff they're dealing with, maybe eating McDonald's every day, corn chips, and sitting watching TV. And that can have dire consequences on a person's life in terms of hypertension, diabetes, and all of those things, which can not only shorten your life expectancy, but also can rob your quality of life. I got little grandkids. I'm 51 years old. I got 6 little grandkids, and I like to run around and chase them. I got friends. Look, so I'm in no offense, they're just too fat and out of shape to run around and chase their grandkids. And for all of us who are getting a little bit older, you want to be able to actually enjoy your family and your life. So it's not just how long you live; it's the quality of life that you live.
Yeah. Yeah. And wellness is absolutely about that. So that's taking place on the 26th, April 26th, from 11 to 2 at Enon Tabernacle, 2800 West Cheltenham Avenue. Of course, you can call for more information about that, 215-227-6161. And wellness is not just about like what happens after you get sick. It's really about prevention and preventing some of that stuff from happening as well, right?
Absolutely. Another wellness event we have is one that you and I have partnered on promoting many times, which is the African American Male Wellness event that we're doing on June 7th. We're kicking it off at 7 a.m. It's going on for a good portion of the day. There's a walk, run. There's all these ways you can get tested. There's a lot of giveaways. There's a lot of cool stuff, and that's getting brothers involved because we are the worst. Black men are the worst at taking care of ourselves and being engaged with doctors. And so, we gotta do better. If we're going to be if we're going to be the maintainers of our household, if we're going to be partners to our wives, if we're going to be the fathers and grandfathers that our communities need us to be, we got to take care of ourselves and be there. And so we're encouraging. So this is an African American Male Wellness event. And we're doing it, and it'll be right down at the Star Complex at 1801 North Broad, kicking it off.
All right. So that's happening. And then I think we got one more thing that's coming up as well. There's a clean energy conversation coming up. That's May 28th at the Franklin Institute. What's that about?
So, there's a bunch of, we talk about clean energy and there are a few things. One, in our community, people talk all around us. We're not engaged. We want to get people. Clean energy is important because, one, for some groups of people, it can be as simple as how do you deal with energy in your home and reducing your energy bills. But on a macro scale, there are going to be a lot of jobs that come out of the clean energy industry. There are going to be a lot of opportunities, and we've got to deal with this because, like it or not, climate change is real. It is impacting. It's not a future thing. It's impacting weather now. We see parts of the country getting flooded, and so we're going to be making changes. Those changes will have economic impacts. Those changes will create job opportunity impacts. Those changes will and hopefully, if it's done right, will actually help mitigate some of the climate damage that is happening. I think we've got to make sure folks are engaged and involved in these conversations and understand what's going on. And so we're having a conversation right at the Franklin Institute. We're going to try and do it in a cool way. We wanted to pick an environment that's friendly to people, but where they can talk about science in a way that people understand. And so I like the Franklin Institute. It's one of my favorite places. And I've always been a little bit of a nerd, but I try to make the stuff kind of cool for people.
Well, one of the things that's happening, there's so much happening coming out of Washington right now. But this is kind of linked to Philadelphia because there's a trade group called the American Public Gas Association that's joined 5 other industry groups to ask the new heads of the Department of Energy and the EPA to review federal funding that's already been approved by Congress for electrification programs that would, move people away from some of these fossil fuels and move them towards electric fuels that would help with climate change. And PGW and this American Public Gas Association that it's a member of, they're fighting against it.
Well, that's just real stupid, especially for the Gas Association in Pennsylvania. So let me explain why. Electrification of vehicles would actually move us away from gasoline, and it will move us towards electric vehicles. But it for the gas company, for the gas producers, it would right now a significant portion of our electricity is still produced with natural gas. Now, look, producing electricity with natural gas and then plugging in an electric vehicle is 75% more energy efficient, 75% reduces the carbon footprint by 75%. But for the natural gas companies, it's shifting us away from foreign oil towards domestically generated energy. Now, ultimately, we want to generate less and less of that with fossil fuels. We want to use solar, we want to use wind, we want to use hydro, we want to use nuclear, but what we don't want to do is keep, if we can avoid it, sticking gasoline and having it burn inside of our cars, because that is the worst way of powering transportation in terms of climate. So even if we use fossil fuels to produce the electricity, doing it at a power plant and then plugging in an electric vehicle is 75% better for the environment. And Pennsylvania is a net energy producer. It's good for Pennsylvanians' economy.
Well, one of the things they're fighting again is building electrification. They don't want the buildings electrified.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, it's
same thing.
It's stupid because the electrification for natural gas producers is stupid. We want to make those buildings electrified because ultimately, if you do buildings being electrified, the energy is still going to get produced. The electricity is still largely going to be produced by
natural gas.
By natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just stupid. And I will tell you, it is absolute. Doing it using natural gas sort of on site is not as efficient. The only thing, it doesn't make any economic sense, and it doesn't make any good policy, which is why the Biden administration is moving this. And look, the fact of the matter is, the Trump administration is a little bit like people who trying to save buggy whip companies and saying we shouldn't be using automobiles because you can sell more buggy whips. Ultimately, we'll succeed by being prepared for the jobs of tomorrow, not trying to cling on to jobs yesterday. And when we start thinking about the climate change impacts, look, man, unless people want to grow gills and learn to live underwater, we need to be serious about climate change.
All right. That's Senator Sharif Street. He joined us this morning to talk about a number of issues. I want to thank you so much.
You're checking out The Week on Word. Represent your favorite station in style. Look for Afrocentric tees, hoodies, tumblers, notebooks, mugs, and more. Just click the shop tab at wordradio.com. Show the world that you're all about Black Talk Media.
You gotta look good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Week on Word. Let's stay connected. Sign up for our newsletter and listen to us online at WURDradio.com and on the Word Radio app.